Well, hello and welcome to sunny Arizona, actually the southern part of Arizona, in the city of Tucson, the county of Pima, but most importantly, the legislative district number 17. I'm Darrell Parrish Bateman, and I'm the host of our YouTube channel. And I have the distinct pleasure today to have as my guest John McLean, the candidate for the Arizona Senate in LD17. Welcome, John.
Great to be here. Terrell, first of all, I think it's fantastic you describe us as sunny Arizona without ever using the word hot in the conversation. I love it. Yes, it is sunny. We love sunny Arizona.
We have to give people something to look forward to when
There
they
you
come.
go.
So we might as well speak about the 360 days of sunshine that we are
Absolutely
able to
right.
have in this wonderful city that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot to be thankful for being in a climate like this,
Yeah,
because I think it creates certain attitudes and behaviors that help you to smile, to be positive, to be encouraging, and to
that's right.
do things like decide to run for Senate. Tell me,
Oh,
John,
yeah.
why did you decide to run for the Arizona Senate?
Well, this was never in my life plan. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
But it's interesting and it's also very timely because it was 2 years ago, almost to the day, that the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And I think we all thought that this was settled law of the land for
Yep.
50 years,
Yep.
everything else. And all of a sudden it came right back to the state. So 2 years ago, I started really paying attention to the state legislature and was horrified by what I saw in the repression of women's reproductive rights. But then it's not just that. The just disrespect for our citizens when it comes to public schools. 92% of our children go to public schools, and the legislature wants to defund that. And I'm very, very concerned. This comes back to Arizona. Very, very concerned about the impact of climate change and drought in Arizona. And there's no protection for our groundwater resources. And Arizona is giving our groundwater resources away. So I've been watching this for 2 years. It was too late 2 years ago to do anything about it. But this cycle is like, we can't let this stand. We have to flip the legislature blue and pass some sensible protections, not just for women, but for our children, our future, right? And also to protect our water so it's there for future generations.
Well,
So,
those are three major issues: education,
yeah,
water, and of course, reproductive rights. I think
right.
rights, period, but right now the reproductive rights are critical. And we're going to talk about all three of those issues in this conversation. But, there's something that I observed on your website that caught my attention, and that is the lead. When you're introducing yourself, you're saying, "My name is John McLean, and I'm a true public servant." And I think that I'd like to chat about that before we go to any issues, because that tells me something, that you are doing this to serve the people. And
Yeah.
I'd like to talk with you about that. What does public service look like?
Well, that's interesting. And I've got two very good role models for what public service looks like. That's my mother and that's
Okay.
my father. So my mother taught in community college for 35 years, Phoenix College up in Phoenix. And she was a passionate teacher. She loved teaching. When she retired, she then volunteered at the local grammar school to help young children with reading disabilities and so forth. That's true public service. When she died, it fell to me to clean out the house. And in the back of her closet, where she had her treasured possessions, was a shoebox filled with thank you notes from all her students going back 35 years.
Wow.
And I saw how what she did impacted so many people's lives. That
Uh-huh.
was on my mother's side. My dad was a very successful businessman in Phoenix, but when he wasn't working in the business, he volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. He took
Oh,
trips down to Central America, building houses in Central America for populations down there. He was always doing things in the community. And so I was grown up in that environment. So it's sort of natural for me. Now, my career sort of consumed an awful lot of my time for way too many years. But I retired about 10 years ago, and and it was a real commitment at that point. It's like, you have this experience, you have these skills, get away from corporate life and apply those same skills to public service. And so I've been on the board of four nonprofits here in Arizona, one involved with preserving our wild lands. In fact, I was president of that organization, Wilderness Volunteers. Um, Another organization, well, here it is, Friends of Pima Animal Care Center. I was the treasurer of that organization for many, many years. I actually just completed my term last night, but in the process of that, I helped establish all sorts of programs over Pima Animal Care Center for animal welfare, including Finn's Fund, named after my own dog Finn, wherever he is there, to help with behaviorally challenged dogs and get them prepared for adoptions. I helped fund something called a Karen's Caring Van, which is a mobile medical unit which goes out into the community to provide low-cost spay, neuter, and veterinary services in the community. And the most exciting thing, the latest thing that's happened, is I funded some scholarships so that recent veterinary graduates from the University of Arizona could learn from a large-scale animal shelter like Pima Animal Care and refine their skills. I was treasurer of my church, St. Albans, on the vestry there. By the way, I was a substitute organist over at St. Albans.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that? And then I'm missing one, which is Native Seed Search. And they're a nonprofit. They've been here in Tucson for about 40 years. But what they do is preserve, protect, and regenerate the seeds from desert adapted crops. And when you think about climate change, the things that we're growing now are not going to grow that well as the planet gets hotter. What Native Seeds has done is preserve these seeds that have been cultivated for millennia by the indigenous populations down here. And they're desert adapted. They're going to grow well in our climate. They're going to grow well in other parts of the world as the world dries out. This is really the future, I think, of our civilization, maintaining those crops. So I've been doing that for 10 years. It seems I always want to do more, but there aren't enough hours in the day.
That's a true statement. You know what's so interesting about what you just said is, hey, I care about other people and other things other than myself,
Yeah.
which speaks to your sense of humanity. And and I'm going to also say, by caring for both desert crops and animals, not humans, just humans, it gives you a sense of your humility, because there's something about helping somebody or something that cannot help themselves that allows you to kind of step back from being in the front and being prideful and really seeing life through a different lens. John, I'm glad you shared this, because this is critical. It's really critical that we have people of service serve us. If you don't know how to serve, you can't suddenly go to the State House and serve. You're like on the job training, and and most of the time people who go don't even understand that they're there. I'm preaching now, there for that purpose. And that's kind of the core of what I want to get from this discussion today.
Sure.
More and more sensibility about the acts of service that a candidate, both before they get there to the White House, to the State House, and then once they're there, what they'll do when they get there. So as we talk about some of the issues that you mentioned earlier, I kind of would like to approach John McLean's humanity and his humility. I hope that as we chat, we talk not just about the stuff that's on the website, but the stuff
you bet. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because I want people to realize how special you are. Just from the few opportunities that I've had to interact with you, I get a sense of that. And
thank you, Joelle.
To get a sense of that today too. So let's talk about that first issue that you mentioned earlier, education. Your mom, and education. That was pretty. We'll go to reproductive rights, which is important to me. But let's talk about education. Tell me about your concerns for our educational system here in Arizona. I interviewed Save Our Schools on our last tape. I hope
Yep.
people who are paying attention to our YouTube channel listen to that interview, because this person, Nancy in the Cottage,
Oh,
was
yes.
very clear. We're number 49 out of 50 states in education. And for
Yeah.
anybody running for a state house that doesn't have that as an issue, I think you might want to think twice about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So maybe to start off, I'll say I have been endorsed by Save Our Schools, just got the endorsement from the Arizona Education Association. I'm passionate about schools. I'm passionate about public education. But the reason being is I went through K through 12 education in Phoenix. Absolutely wonderful, inspiring teachers. And it's not just the teachers, it's also the environment, which is a very, what's the right word, nourishing, enriching, open environment where you can be put, as a young child growing up in the company of your peers, young children with all kinds of different backgrounds. And unless you have that uh, sort of diverse experience meeting with other cultures and other people growing up, you're going to have a real problem as an adult. I absolutely believe that.
Very
And
true.
I was blessed with growing up in public schools. One more anecdote, I'll say my junior year in high school, I had an absolutely wonderful math teacher, Mr. Cox, Robert Cox. I will never forget him. He was so good. And he's the reason I went down to the U of A to earn a degree in mathematics. And I would say he was the reason that that I eventually went on to Caltech and got a PhD in math. That's a teacher in my junior year in high school. That's the impact the teachers can have. And I want to make sure that every child in Arizona has the opportunity to grow up, learn about civil discourse in public schools in a diverse population, have inspiring teachers that are going to launch them in a good career, no matter what they want. Every student in Arizona should have that opportunity, and public schools is the only way that's going to happen.
Well, I believe that to be true, but when we're at a race to the bottom in education, I don't know how that happens when our current legislator doesn't see education for everyone as a priority. Let me say that again. They don't see education for everyone as a priority. And by that, and it is not just public schools, but it is because we're at a race to the bottom with both public schools, elementary schools, and high schools, but also junior colleges and higher education. We are not funding our educational system. And there's some reasons for that. Do you know what the reasons are?
Oh, there's probably political. Well, I got to say, is they've got to be political issues, but on an intellectual level, I can't understand why anybody would want to underfund our public schools, because that's the future of Arizona. It makes zero sense to me.
Well, if you decide that schools that are done at home are more important than schools that are for the greater good, you might think it's a good idea. One of those wild schemes that certain people come up with all the time, that and flat tax are the reason that we have the problem we have. Let me say it again in plain language. Vouchers are not for everyone. They're only for a chosen few. I'm using my language correctly. Chosen few. Those that think they're chosen to do what they do have chosen to take money, steal money from other people. Doesn't sound very Christian to me, but that's the problem. I'm preaching and I'm okay. It's my show. I can preach. Vouchers are a problem. They're robbing public schools, public education, and higher education. And our electorate needs to wisen up, okay? And they should listen to our other tape to find out, look at the statistics and see why what I'm saying is the facts. And because of that, we don't pay our teachers a living wage and a living salary. And so we don't have the best because we're not paying people what they deserve to be paid. That's my first one. Okay.
Well, there you go. Darrell, you are preaching to the choir. So
but there's another one. There's another wild scheme that's doing it. Do you know what it is? Because on your website, you talk about fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
Okay. And so when we have a governor that has another wild scheme called flat tax.
Yeah.
Okay. We send people to government that don't like government. Therefore, they don't fund government. And so we come up with wild schemes that say, oh, we're going to be so fiscally conservative and we're going to do all these things and not do the work that government has been set up to do. So I want to talk about education, those two issues, and why they're good or not good, and what you're going to do when you go, good public servant that you are, to our state house to rectify these things.
Well, there you go. So let me give you, by the way, what I'm looking at is our good friends at Civic Engagement Beyond Voting just put out sort of their annual legislative review.
Okay.
And they've got a great, it's 7 or 8 pages on the budget. And there's some fascinating numbers in here. One is on the vouchers. People have gone back, credible economists have gone back and looked at where the voucher money is going. And it's over $300 million.
Say that again. Say it again.
$300 million is going to parents of students that were already in private schools. Recent analysis of the budget showed that over $300 million from the Universal Voucher Program is going to parents of students that were already in private schools.
Wow.
So this is a total transfer of funds from the taxpayers to private schools. Unbelievable. There's another number here, because you were talking about community colleges. Community colleges took a $34 million hit in this budget, which represents 40% cut in state funding.
Wow.
Community colleges, I went to community colleges. Yeah. My mother taught community college. You can't cut the funding for community colleges.
Because they do most of the vocational training. Jobs.
Yeah. Well, it's more than that. It's also an affordable alternative to four-year colleges.
That's right.
I earned, a full year of college education at community college before I went to the U of A. My wife got 2 years of college credit at Pima College before she came to the U of A. My niece got 2 years of affordable college education at Pima College before she went to the U of A. Mm-hmm. It's a lifesaver for so many people, and yet the state wants to cut that. So what's going to be the change? The very interesting thing is, this is getting a little wonky, but Prop 123, which was passed by the voters years ago, was an initiative to allocate funds from the state land trust to support public education. That's expiring next year. Next year, if we have a majority, Democratic majority in the House and Senate.
You say when we have, please?
When we have, there you go, majority in the House and Senate, we can go back to Proposition 123, get that back on the ballot, restore funding for public schools, and that'll be multi-years. That's going to be a decade going out, and have full sustained funding. The other thing that's coming up is this, again, wonky thing, the aggregate expenditure limit. We have a chance to fix that once and for all for our public schools. By the way, Arizona cannot afford to be 49th in the nation of per pupil spending. We've got to get at least to the median national level, and I would like to be in the upper third.
Well, you know what is so interesting to me? I hear other candidates talking about this. They're talking about themselves.
Yeah.
They're talking about, we can't even go there. So
don't go there.
I appreciate you being an informed candidate about an issue that's important to you. So I'm going to say thank you. And I'm going to say I'm happy that education and also fiscal responsibility, which doesn't just mean let's not fund the government. Let's look at where we're sending the money and let's spend it in the way that's going to help the people.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So now, shall we do water first or reproductive rights? Because
your call. Your call.
Let's do the reproductive rights. You talked about the anniversary of the Dobbs decision, which was yesterday, the 24th. And let's just kudos to LD17 and the Southern Arizona Hub for generating more signatures than any other place in the state. Speaking of our ground game, look out, y'all. Here we come. So anyway, I'm terribly excited, or very excited about this. Why don't you tell me why this issue is so important to you?
Well, women's rights are important. I mean, the majority of our population is female. I mean, let's just face it. So their rights, we've got to protect. It's not a female versus male issue. It's a universal human rights issue. End of story. So we really got to fix it. there are personal stories associated with that. And Eva Birch, was it the House or the Senate? She gave personal, heart-wrenching personal story about her pregnancy with a non-viable fetus and what she had to go through to get appropriate medical care for that situation. It's disgraceful.
Yes, it is.
No woman should have to go through that ever, ever, ever. And so we have to fix that problem. My wife's niece, raising a family or starting a family in Texas, suffered a miscarriage. She went to get treated. She was denied treatment in the midst of a miscarriage, and only when she suffered a bad infection was she finally treated. She moved to Maryland because she knew she could not start a family in a state that didn't give appropriate medical care to pregnant women. It's terrible.
So this is you hear me use this term wild schemes. We're sending people that come up with wild schemes. We had a 50-year already resolved decision, and they thought it would be a good idea to take it away, and create madness and chaos.
Yes, that's why it is so important that we get abortion access rights enshrined in the Constitution, because you know that if it's not in the Constitution, the legislature is going to try to take it away. Very, very important. It's got to be on the ballot. We've got to vote for it. We've got to enshrine it in the Constitution.
Say that again. It has to be on the ballot, and you have to what for it?
Vote for it.
Thank you.
Right. Very important. This election in November, and I've said this many times in many contexts, this election in November is probably one of the most critical elections in the state, if not in the nation, for so many reasons. Yeah. For so many reasons. In Arizona, enshrining abortion access rights in the Constitution is essential. Flipping the legislature is essential. There's just too much going on this cycle. Everybody has to.
So we're going to end this call when we talk about flipping the legislature, but it's important to me because you are doing such a wonderful job of speaking to issues that concern all of us.
Oh, yeah.
And the next one is water. Everybody talk, oh, the water's going to dry up. Oh, it's going to go away. And they whine and they cry. But is our legislature doing anything about that, John?
Well, not really. They had this wild idea, a couple of years ago.
Another wild scheme.
There you go. They figured for $1 billion, they could build a desalination plant in Mexico and pipe it, and then all our problems would be solved. Bunch of nonsense. First of all, I want to say what does work in Arizona. 45 years ago, the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. This is 45 years ago. People recognized we had a problem with water 45 years ago. And in Pima County and Maricopa County, and there may be some other areas, we implemented an active management area to manage our water supply so it's there for the next 100 years. But that was not implemented across the state. You go down, less than an hour's drive in Cochise County, and you see wells drying up because they do not have those protections. Mm-hmm. So Katie Hobbs, our courageous Democratic governor, convened a water policy council from people from across the state, urban, rural, farmers, industrial, all perspectives, to confront this problem and come up with actionable recommendations. And they put out those recommendations in November. Very sensible recommendations. Priya Sundarshan, brilliant senator in LD17, put forward a bill in January to implement those recommendations. Mm-hmm. They were never even heard because the Republican head of the Senate never assigned it to a committee, so it died. But if you look at those recommendations from this Water Policy Council, there's lots of actionable things that can be done to steward, I'll use that word carefully, steward our water resources so there's adequate for our rural population, our urban populations, and future growth. We can do that if we manage it carefully. We know what to do, but it's not going to get passed unless we have control of the House and Senate.
And we have to send smart people that understand facts, figures, history. And John, you have a background in business, I know that, and you already have said I'm a math genius.
I didn't say I'm a math genius.
I said it for you. And then you had a business that did what?
Oh, so the business was actually building electro-optic sensors, a lot of big words, very high resolution optical sensors for the defense industry. And what we built here in Tucson, the business I built here in Tucson, built these sensors to detect sea mines in the water, so our naval ships don't get blown up, to detect land mines on the shore, so our Marines don't get blown up, and things like that, things that protect our troops, and make sure they are safe when we send them out to do a critical mission. So I'm very proud of that work.
I'm going to translate. I want to translate what you just said. I created a business that created or invented or dispersed some products that would benefit, there's that word, help somebody else other than yourself, benefit our troops. You have already have the wherewithal that what I do on this day has to benefit someone else other than just me and my bank account.
Right.
I want that to convey, because if you've never had an experience of how the human system works, that we're not just here for ourselves, and there's no evidence within anything you've ever done that you can even know how to care about someone other than yourself, then you that person to go care about you. I'm saying this importantly because we've kind of gotten away from looking at the heart of the people we send to serve us. So I just wanted to do that. And thank you for doing that. That's why I wanted to go to some of your background, because I think it's important people get that. Okay.
I got to add to that just one little thing. My wife, a system engineer, worked at Raytheon for 20 years. Same thing, built ship self-defense systems at Raytheon. And the most I guess emotionally, professionally satisfying thing she ever did in her 20-year career was she went out on the deck of a U.S. Navy ship out in San Diego Harbor and saw her ship self-defense systems on the deck of that ship, prepared to protect our sailors.
There we go.
That is a moving experience.
Understanding the heart of things matters. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate being able to talk with you about something other than just a resume and what I'm doing when I get there, because these are really important. So we've talked about education. We've talked about reproductive rights. We've talked about water. Is there anything else that you'd like us to cover on this interview? I think you've just done a remarkable job of letting us know who John McLean really is.
Maybe, it's sort of, there's a thread that weaves through that. And the thread is sort of compassion, right? And I just highlight my work in animal welfare, sort of a tangible example of that, but it doesn't stop with just animal welfare. It's one of the things I've learned working at PAC is it's not that we're just working with the animals, we're working with families in the community to help them keep their beloved animals in their own home. And that's a whole additional level of compassion, working with the families, working with the people in the community, doing things that matter to help enrich their lives. That's so important.
I so appreciate this. So I have two little buzzwords I like, humanity and humility, and I decided to go to Webster's dictionary to look up humanity, and the words say compassionate, sympathetic, generous behavior. It's the quality of the state of being. Oh,
there you go.
If you have
I
not spoken to that today, you really have. Anybody that was in doubt about who John McLean is has a better understanding of his humanity and his humility. I am so thankful for that. Now, I said I was going to do one more thing, and that was that we have to be able to make sure we flip the switch in the legislature and make sure that we have a Democratic, yes, we're talking about politics now, Democratic versus the other party or other people who are running on a different party. They can do their own talking about them. Let's talk about why that's so important and what we can do when it happens.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to push back a little.
Okay.
Because when we talk about those issues of women's rights, good public schools, secure water future, those are nonpartisan issues.
That's very true.
And so when I knock on doors throughout this district, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. They resonate on those issues. These are nonpartisan. I'm going to be elected. I use the words, I am going to be
I'm
elected because people care about those issues. They're not going to vote for the party.
good.
I really see that when I knock on doors. So, so like I say, I'm going to push back. I don't want to get into partisan politics. If we focus on the issues, people will know exactly how to vote, and they will vote, and I will get elected to the seat.
Well, I hope everyone listening to this understands why they should elect John McLean, who happens to be a Democrat. And because the only thing we're talking about in this segment is flipping the legislature from the current majority to a different majority and why that's important. Can you speak to why that would be important?
Yeah. So what's happening now with Republican control of the House and Senate? I mean, the leaders of the House and Senate basically determine which bills get assigned to committees. If you happen to be a Democrat right now, your bill will not get assigned to committee. It will never get heard. It will never get to Katie Hobbs's desk. You got to change that dynamic. All we have to do is to flip one seat in the House and the Senate. All of a sudden, these bills will get to committees. Then we can debate them. The other thing that's interesting that's going on is we're seeing. I'll put it this way: I'm seeing evidence of, believe it or not, current Republicans in the state legislature with sensible ideas that will work with Democrats on these issues to get sensible bills passed on a bipartisan basis. They're being whacked down every time they bring their heads up by the Republican leadership, but they're there, and I intend to be working with them. Once we do that, there we go. There's the trifecta: women's reproductive freedom, public school funding, secure water future. We're going to pass those bills. And I believe we're going to be able to pass it on a bipartisan basis.
So I'm going to repeat something you said by using the words of one of our great history senators, John McCain.
There you go.
Said, we need to go back to what? Regular order. When it didn't make any difference which party you were in. The issue was the people that we came to serve. And so when we get together, we do the work of the people.
The
What you're
people.
telling me,
That's right.
John, is you elect John McCain, who happens to be a Democrat and can help to change the composition of the legislature. I will work with other people for you, no matter what party. Even though I represent one party, I am an independent-minded person who's going to work for you. Did I say that well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So my message is to all of the thirds. They say we're divided into thirds. There's this red and blue, Democrat, blah, 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 that's created madness. But John is telling us he represents everybody. He doesn't care where you landed, whatever it says, he's going to go there and represent you because he is a public servant.
There you go.
I don't want anybody to forget that, who comes to the table with humanity and humility. John, I hope I've covered everything. Is there anything I didn't cover that you'd like to leave with?
We could go on forever, Terrell. So I look forward to our next opportunity. But for this one, I think we covered the top issues.
We did. And I wanted people to get to know you because they can read your website. They can listen to you talk at these events. But to get a sense of who this man is, I hope that people who are paying attention to this will see it as very valuable. John McLean, thank you for taking time out of your day. Thank you for being a man of humanity and humility who wants to serve the people in the state of Arizona. And thank you for everything that you're doing and that you will continue to do once you become the Arizona Senator in November. So go out and register if you're not registered.
Yeah, there you go. Highfalutin words, Arizona Senator. Well, I like what you said earlier. Servant of the people. That's what I'm
Servant of the people. Don't forget that. And when you go out and talk, you make sure you say, someone said I was a servant of the people.
There you go. That would make me proud.
So thank you so much for taking time. And thank you to all those who are listening to this or viewing this on our YouTube channel. This is the LD17 YouTube channel, and please subscribe and listen. We're bringing information not just on candidates, but on subjects like water, education, reproductive rights, that if you just check out some of these really smart dedicated people who take their time and come on this channel, you're going to learn more than you originally knew, and you're going to know exactly why you should be voting the way you will vote in November, because you're going to send people to our legislator and to Congress who are for the people. Thanks again. And thank you, John.
Thank you.